Oh, let me get some light going here. There we go. Howdy, howdy. Welcome to another live session we're going to do today. Working on a project here in the shop. I'm going to go ahead and jump into it and wait on y'all to join when you get here. So I'm working on a project in the shop. I can't show you what it is because it's a firearm and YouTube's live stream restrictions. Obviously, they do not love holding firearms in a live stream. So we're going to talk to it. I have a customer who wants to rebarrel a gun, and the project requires removing the barrel from the barreled action, obviously. It is a Remington 700 clone or Remington 700 derivative action. It's actually a Bergara Premier action. And we are pulling the barrel off and rebarreling into 6.5 PRC. Pretty straightforward process normally, but it got me to thinking that I'd like to upgrade some tooling I have here in the shop. I come from the school where removing a barrel requires an action wrench, like this guy here. This is actually set up to do a Remington 700, and a barrel vise. You clamp the barrel into the vise, you use the action wrench to twist the barrel off, or to twist the action off of the stationary barrel. This is a pretty common procedure in the gunsmithing world, and this style action wrench has been around for quite some time. All of the gunsmithing books that I have in my reference library reference this specific tool and how to make one even. This is a Brownells tool. I've had it for years and years and years. I can't tell you how many actions it has pulled off, or barrels it's pulled out of actions. With that being said, that techniques have changed a little bit over time. There are some different options available, and one of those is a more modernized action wrench. Not that it's necessarily better than the traditional style, it's just a different approach. So then comes the project at hand. The customer has sourced an outlier barrel. We've talked about it in another live stream. It's a carbon fiber shrouded barrel. And so you can't necessarily clamp that in a barrel vise like I would with a steel barrel or a stainless barrel. It requires a little bit different technique, and it uses a barrel nut setup. And so even if you can clamp it in to the action, the shoulder, the stainless shoulder at the front of the barrel doesn't leave a lot of room for you to get a tool in there to torque the barrel nut. And then comes in the action wrench. And so there are a couple of different options on the market. I was on Facebook the other day in a gunsmithing group that I'm in, and was kind of measuring who used what in the industry, a bunch of my peers, to see who was using what action wrench. And there is a new, the new kit is made by a company called Short Action Customs. They are a rifle builder, but they also sell tools for the gunsmith and gun enthusiast. And so they have a modular action wrench. So if you imagine the barrel end of a receiver and then the butt end of the receiver, the action wrench comes in from the butt end, has a Delrin piece that goes up against your chamber face, and then has a set of lugs that lock into the raceways, on specifically a Remington 700. And so the head on this tool is interchangeable. You can use different heads for different actions. Kind of a cool concept for me. But then I get to thinking, that sounds proprietary, and proprietary in my world usually equates to more expensive than necessary. And so I Googled it, and this tool is a bare tool is $140, depending on where you get it, straight from Short Action Customs or from Midway USA Brownells, one of the tool suppliers. It's about $140, and then each of the interchangeable heads is about $60 a piece. Expensive, sure, not exorbitantly expensive, but somebody like me who's going to use this tool multiple times a month or dozens or even hundreds of times a year, it's probably worth it. But I don't know anybody personally who has one and who has used one. And I'm also the kind of person that likes to go off of word of mouth and recommendation. So Defiance actually offers a tool. Let me pull up here. Defiance Machine offers a tool. This is their action wrench. They offer it in a couple of different versions, but it's pretty straightforward. You can see where this slides in from the rear. This portion engages with the lugs or the bolt raceway in the front of the receiver, and then it's got a lugged portion rear here for using a torque wrench with. Pretty straightforward design. This one has 3 sizes for proper fit to the receiver, kind of depending on the manufacturer of your receiver. But it's a hardened 4340, which is, if you don't know, it's a pretty hard steel to begin with. It machines well, but it's on the harder scale. Can be hardened more readily than more mild steels. It works with a left and right hand action, and then it has a 3/16 hex for use with a torque wrench on the end of it. So I got to looking at that, and me being the person that I am, $125. It's not incredibly expensive, but it's pretty easy to machine. It's not incredibly detailed geometries. There's nothing super crazy about it. And looking at how they've designed it, I can pretty easily tell you how they made it. That has a hex head on one end to hold in a 3-jaw chuck, and then it's got a center drilled in the bottom, or in the action end of it. So it was put in a rotary, and that's how they machined it. Pretty straightforward. And I said to myself, you could make one of these. And that led me down, kind of down a rabbit hole. I spend a good bit of time in the shop organizing and making tools more useful for the job. So I like to make my own tools sometimes. It's usually more cost effective for me to make them. I did a live stream the other day about a 1911 front sight tool that I've been working on. It's a little more rigid than what's available on the market. It gives more repeatable, consistent results. And all it cost me is some bits and pieces of leftover metal stock and some time on a machine. So I thought, yeah, maybe I could make one of these. So I took a piece of paper, and my white paper doesn't like my lighting. There we go. So drew some rough dimensions of the bolt head and what I need for an action tool, and jumped into CAD. And let me see what I've got here. I jumped into CAD and came up with pretty straightforward action wrench. It uses the same basic principle as the machine tool. It just has full length rails that go all the way down. A little bit heavier, a little more robust though. It's got more material the entire length of it. It does not take into account any bolt stop cuts in the receiver or any bolt stop in the receiver, but drew a set of plans, pretty straightforward, nothing crazy. And then I got to thinking to myself, really, this is not the most complex part. Years ago, I watched a guy on YouTube who did work for a company called Xometry. And so somebody like me would design a CAD drawing, upload that into Xometry, and get some quotes for that particular part. And then Xometry would sub that out to small job shops that would, and they would say, yep, I'll do it for the amount quoted. They source the material, the machining, they package it, they ship it directly to me. Pretty straightforward. And so I looked just to see what's a quote for, we'll use the same material that was used in, let's see here. I have 2 different quotes, so I got to make sure I got the right one. The same material that was used in the original specifications. Let me a better view. Basically, my dimensions here, 12 1/4 or 12 1/8 of an inch by 1 inch diameter by 1 inch diameter. Pretty straightforward. Machined out of 4340. This does not take into consideration any heat treating or after treatments, if you will. So heat treatments. And made internationally is $382.49. So 100 than the short action customs tool, and double the price of the Defiance tool. Made locally in the United States, it's over $1,000. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's expensive. But that's using 4340. So it's an expensive material. That doesn't take any consideration into it, hardening it or material properties, but 4340. What if we went to a cheaper material and built the same tool? Would that... So let's talk about materials. And this is, I'm going to get way out into the... So just a quick Google search using AI. The shear strength for 4340 versus 6061 T6, which is a really common free machining aluminum. Some AR receivers are made from this. It's a very common material in the aerospace world, in a lot of industries, very common material. And 4340 is significant shear strength. So we're talking about a bolt and we're twisting it. Is 6061 going to hold up to the same torque? With the longer raceway lugs, I would think that they would be comparable, but it's almost double the strength. But if you look at the torque value for 430 pascals versus inch pounds, it's a huge figure, an absolutely astronomical figure. And so I went to Xometry and getting a quote to make the same part. Oh, wrong one. Give me one second. To make the same part out of 6060. And again, my quote was $233 to be made internationally, and then to be made inside the United States, $468.66. It's a pretty expensive expenditure for a tool that I can purchase from several online retailers. There's some options on eBay and Amazon for the same purpose, but kind of in that same design function space as what we're talking about for the Defiance tool. It's 3 times the cost. And Kitty Pigeon, good question. So an action wrench. So I have an action bar. This is an old Wheeler Engineering action bar that for an AR-15 upper receiver. Same concept. So this goes into the back of the upper receiver, and it has this lug here where your charging handle goes and your gas port is. And then it has a set of locking lugs that hold the barrel and action together, and then you use a wrench to remove the barrel nut on an AR-15. Similarly, on a bolt action rifle, like this project calls for, the action wrench, in this case, you use a set of blocks. I'm going to grab, so you use a set of oak blocks like these or aluminum blocks, and you clamp a barrel into a barrel vise. And so that holds the barrel in one position, and then you use the action wrench to turn the action off of the barrel. So if that's if it doesn't have a barrel nut. So the action wrench that I have drawn is pretty easy to machine. It's not incredibly difficult. It's actually a little more than is needed. You could simply use a flat piece of appropriately sized material that has the right radius for the bolt lug, slide it into the back of the receiver, clamp it in a vise, and do the same thing. But just out of curiosity, I wanted to see how difficult this thing would be to make. And so now that we've ruled out the farming it out option and using somebody like Xometry or any of the other local machining services that are available, I think what I'm going to end up doing is ultimately making one of these. I have a pretty decent set of plans that I've drawn up. Like I said, I'm fairly familiar with CAD and CNC work, but I think I will draw the plans. I'm playing with the idea of 3D printing them. It's a very tall cylindrical part, and so my limited experience with 3D printing and plastic is that it may distort a bit from the heat. And I think what I'm ultimately going to do is probably 3D print a stub portion of it just to check the fit into the receiver. So maybe a 5 or 6 inch section, check the fit into the receiver, and then print the lug just to make sure that it interfaces correctly, that all of my webbing between hard geometries is appropriate. I don't want to spend all of my time machining something only to find out that it doesn't work after the fact. I think that I will prototype it in plastic on the 3D printer. Pretty easy to print, and I can make it fairly hollow, not a lot of infill. But I did look. I don't have any 4340 or 6061 for that matter in the right size and length. But I do have a piece of hot rolled 1-inch round bar. It's pretty rusty, but fortunately for me, the dimensions that I've drawn, the major diameter on the entire tool is smaller than 1 inch, just marginally so. So I can do a skim pass, cut the rust off of this. And ultimately, I'm going to do a turning procedure, take the tool. I'll probably do a full-length video on this, by the way. Yeah, Kitty Pigeon. Like and subscribe if you are interested in this kind of content. I will probably do a longer video on the subject, kind of detailing step-by-step how I go about it. Years ago, I had a good friend who was what I will call a master machinist. He spent nearly 50 years working for an oil field company in a prototype position. And so he was making prototypes of parts, running everything from manual machines, lathes and mills, a wire EDM, a CNC milling machine. And these are large scale, making parts to determine if they were commercially viable for that particular oil field company. And so years ago, we had a conversation. We were sitting around drinking coffee after we had gone to lunch. Jersey Mike's was his favorite, by the way. And we were sitting around having a conversation about order of operation. And so what I will probably do is do a write-up for my website, HuntsvilleGuns.com. I have a little blog section over there. I'll do a write-up with kind of how I delineate my order of operation. And then we'll do a turning operation to clean up the stock. This gives me an opportunity to kind of trial run some modifications that I made on my bandsaw the other day. I had to make a table for it for another project. So cut this material to length, put it in the lathe, turn the OD to the right diameter, and then center drill both ends. And then I will take that and hold it in a 6-sided collet spacer or collet holder. Put it in the milling machine, machine the flats for the 3/4 inch lug that I'm going to put on the hex head that I'm going to put on the end of it. Turn a little bit basic geometry in the lathe for that, and then put it over in the milling machine. Or no, excuse me, go back to the lathe, turn the OD for the bolt raceway lugs, and then go back to the milling machine, and ultimately using the rotary indexer and the super spacer shape the tool. It'll take a little bit of work because this is a fairly long tool. And so I'll have to use a live center in one end and the super spacer, the rotary indexer, to do the majority of the work. And then polish it up. Like I said, this is very mild material. This is just hot rolled A36 or similar mild steel. I've played around with the idea of case hardening it, but I honestly don't think that it's necessary. So my speculation is that the shape of the tool that Defiance offers, so let me jump back over to that picture. So shape of this tool. So they have a short section of lug here that engages at the very front of the receiver where the receiver ring is. And then they have no lug engagement at the rest of the body of the tool. I speculate they do that because if your tool distorts, it can also twist your receiver, which you don't want. And that's why they have also hardened it, because they have a much shorter section of engagement. And so they don't want those to plastic deform under torque. I think with longer lugs, so continuing my lug for the raceway all the way to the rear, yes, I will get some deformation in the wrench, but ultimately the manufacturer for the specific outlier barrel that I'm installing recommends 40 to 70 foot-pounds of torque barrel nut, which in the grand scheme of things is not 150 foot-pounds. It's a very small torque value. So I think I'll be more than adequate. Like I said, there is some tighter radiuses. I think originally I drew them up at a 0.0625 or a 1/16 radius. I don't know that I have a 1/16 ball mill. And if I do, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have enough flute length to cut the job. And so I either am going to order some tools or change my radius just slightly, go to a slightly larger. I know I have a 1/8 inch ball end mill. Panther, I actually had a conversation about your forge today with my cousin. We were talking about the possibility of needing to do that for this project. Again, my cousin, I said this in the last live stream, my cousin is a bladesmith and has a forge, but he lives several hours away. And so it's not like I can just jump in the truck and run up there. His suggestion was that if I am going to heat treat this, because it is mild steel, they do make some over-the-counter recipes. Brownells used to sell Casonite, and I think they also still sell Cherry Red, which is a case hardening compound. It's a surface hardening compound. You put it on there, and then you put it in the forge, bring it up to temperature for a certain amount of time, and it will give you a surface hardness. I think in this particular project, I'm going to leave it in an as machine state. This is hot rolled is usually less prone to deflection and deformation after machining. Cold rolled usually has some built up stress and tension in it. And so I don't think that this is going to deform any. But he also said to make sure that in the case hardening process that you don't include, or that you include enough material to remachine after. You want to go thick enough in the hardening or deep enough in the hardening that you can remachine it after because of the scale buildup. And so I think for this prototype tool that we're talking about, I will probably leave it as machined. But I definitely was talking to my cousin about your forge earlier and the project. He suggested that it was a very viable option for what I normally do. I'm curious to know what questions you have. Like I said, this is a very specific video for this project, but I'm more than happy to talk about a broader scale of gunsmithing specific stuff, swapping barrels and shop made tools and machining and things of that nature. This is one of those things that ultimately it's time versus money. And I will say that at the end of the day, I'm going to have a lot of time tied up into this tool, and it will probably cost me more in labor hours than buying a tool is worth. But anytime you get to use your tools and flex your machining ability, I think it's a benefit. And then ultimately, if it doesn't work out and it's a teetotal failure, I can just toss it in the parts bin. So Kitty Pigeon, that's an excellent question. If this tool finishes in the dimension that I have drawn up, it is specific to a Remington 700 or Remington 700 clone, and not all of them. There are some strange actions out there like Zermatt and Bat Machine that they use a Remington 700 footprint, but they have different raceways, different lug designs. There's 3 lugs, 4 lug, 5 lug, blah, 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 blah. This tool will probably be Remington 700 clone specific. But if conceptually, if the tool works out, then it would be simple enough to just modify the design for a different action type. So say a Savage Model 10 110 or Kimber, Montana. Basically, I could turn around and use the same design slightly modified. I already have the CAD drawing. Could make multiple iterations of it for multiple different options. I also toyed around with making it on the CNC. I hope that answered your question. I played around with making it on the CNC. I don't have a 4th axis for the Tormach, and one would definitely be required for this particular project. But a CNC machine would make this much more skewed towards the time versus money argument. Basically, I could draw this tool up and then create a tool path to turn it in a 4th axis. So cut the material to length, face both ends, put centers in both ends, and then turn a hex lug on the driven end in the lathe, and then put that hex end into a 3-jaw in a 4th axis and do all of the machining in a rotary fashion. But ultimately don't have a 4th axis yet. And so that one's not really a good option for this project. Yeah, so if you are considering, so the Savages are incredibly easy to do a barrel swap on, and that's because they use a barrel. Give me a second. I'll move a bunch of stuff here. Savages use a barrel nut, and so they sell barrel nut wrenches for the Savage. And so basically all you need to swap a barrel is a barrel vise, a barrel nut wrench, and this one is actually, I don't remember where I got this one, Brownells probably, or Midway. Pretty common, but they sell 2 different style barrel nuts. Savages use 2 different styles. And so this one has a square lug. This one has a slightly rounded lug. I know you can't see that. The resolution is terrible. But a barrel vise, a barrel nut wrench, and a set of headspace gauges. And then you're off to the races. Savages are very simple to change the barrel on because of that barrel nut. And a lot of manufacturers now are going to a barrel nut design simply for ease of manufacture. So when you set the headspace on a Remington 700, the headspace is set on from the face of the receiver, interference with the shoulder on the barrel. And anytime you need to go in on or extend your headspace, you either have to machine the face on the barrel or the face of the receiver. Whereas with the barrel nut, you simply loosen the barrel nut, turn the barrel in, tighten the barrel nut. It's very straightforward. So a lot of companies now, Mossberg, a lot of companies are going to a barrel nut style on their cheaper rifles simply because cheaper price-wise, not necessarily quality, because it is faster and requires less technical skill to install and headspace a barrel in a factory setting or even in the gunsmith shop. I have a Mossberg Patriot Action. I did a write-up on it over on my website. To swap a barrel on it is super simple. You can use, I've used a shop-made tool. Shop-made tools are my favorite if you haven't picked up on it. But you can make a shop-made tool. That's just a piece of 1/2-inch plate. I think that's actually the webbing from a piece of rail track or one of the similar style commercial-made tools. It's got to have a square lug in it and for your torque wrench, and then a circular diameter with the cross bolt to tighten it. They're super, super simple to make if you have some basic machine tools. And then it gives you the ability to swap barrels pretty easily. Like I said, Savages are really popular because of the interchangeable, somewhat interchangeable bolt heads and then interchangeable barrels. They're very easy to modify. Pretty accurate too, in my experience. I've had some Savage guns come through the door of the shop that were exceptionally accurate. But what other questions do y'all have? Yeah, Kitty. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to knowing the answers to questions. And when it comes to the gun world, this is what I do professionally. I mean, I spend my time, if I don't know how to do a job, then I'm going to do the research to figure out how to do the job. And do I have the tools, or do I need to make the tools, or is it more affordable to buy the tools? Yeah, Liberty. The action wrenches are usually pretty easy to get a hold of. I can get online. I have a dozen part suppliers that I order from. I can get online and order an action wrench today for pretty much any action that I want to work on. I am a bit of a nerd and I enjoy making tools as much as I enjoy using them. And so the action wrenches are usually pretty straightforward to find. Now, the short action custom one that I talked about earlier, they are out of stock on the common bolt or common action heads, interchangeable heads for that. So the Remington 700 has been out of stock for a couple of weeks now, every time I look. but action wrenches are pretty easy. A barrel vise is not difficult to make. I would show you mine, but it's bolted to the table over here. It's simply a couple of pieces of flat bar, the blocks that go in between it, and some bolts to pull everything tight. Barrel vices are pretty straightforward. You can even use a wrench style barrel vise if you have a big enough table and the right setup. Yeah, so the gantry was a kind of a not planned addition to the shop, but I use that thing all the time. That's a cheapy Harbor Freight, or if you're in Canada, Princess Auto gantry. I think it's rated for a ton. The height is adjustable. You put a chain fall and a block on it. Actually, my brother-in-law gave me that gantry. It was pretty straightforward to put it back together, but he bought it for an engine pull project that he needed to do a couple of years ago, and then took it outside and set it in pieces next to his shop and never used it again. And I was down for the holidays, and he said, "Hey man, if you want it, haul it off." Yeah, they're not cheap, but comparatively they are cheaper than other options. I've never had an issue with that one. Don't tell Harbor Freight this, but I have definitely lifted more than a 1 ton with it. I actually set the head on the Tormach onto the pedestal using that gantry when I moved it to where it is currently. But it's got big casters on the bottom, and you can move it all over. It's kind of out of the way right now. Yeah, I started off using a snatch block and a chain fall. But if you can't tell, my shop is built with red iron. And so it's got 6x6 box tubing in the corners, and then the center rib that runs down kind of the short side of the shop is also 6x6. So I used to use a chain hoist attached at the center section, but it's limited in where you can go in the shop. And then you also cannot use the red iron that runs back here, the red iron that's above the gantry. That's C-purlin, and it doesn't have any weight bearing capability. Yeah, if you're building one, I would tell you that insulation is a must. In retrospect, I wouldn't have moved everything in here until I had spray foamed it. It's pretty warm and humid here in Texas, and steel likes to sweat. And so I would definitely suggest insulating if you were going to build one before you move all your stuff in. But it's I would show you all the action in the project that I'm working on. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't allow that. The outlier barrel that the customer ordered, he originally ordered to go onto one Remington 700, but that rifle shoots exceptionally well. I don't know if I can convey how well that rifle shoots. It's sub quarter of an inch at 100. I mean, it's a very, very accurate 6.5 PRC, and he ordered the barrel because it's their backdraft barrel, so it works with their proprietary suppressor setup. And he wanted to switch it, and I said, "Look, man, find you another barreled action." He found a Bergar Premier action that already had a barrel on it, had the right bolt face, and so we're just going to pull that barrel. He'll have an extra barrel to play around with, but ultimately gives him, it keeps one accurate rifle, and then ultimately moves into another accurate rifle as well. Kind of a cool setup. 20-inch 6.5 PRC, pretty short for a lot of the PRC calibers, but I think it'll be a pretty handy gun. He does a lot of hunting in Central and West Texas, and I think it'll serve him well in that purpose. What other questions do y'all have? Like I said, I feel like I'm kind of droning on a little bit. I have to go pick up a kid from the weight room after school. Disregard, he just texted me that he got a ride from his friend. So I do not have to do that. But what other questions do you have related to this project? Customer about the project actually is texting me right now. Anything specific to gunsmithing, gun-related content? I did a live stream the other day talking about upcoming firearms releases and things to look out for Black Friday. That video has done abysmally. But is there a subject matter for a video that y'all would like to see, or something specific that I could make a video on that you would find helpful. Believe it or not, I was looking at analytics while I give you all a chance to catch up. I was looking at analytics on my YouTube channel. It's growing slowly, and the videos that seem to consistently do the best are the videos that I honestly didn't think would do very well. So there's a Remington 742 video, a Remington 760 video, just basics of kind of what to look out for in the actions when you're purchasing a used gun, some of the features. There's a Pieta video that I did that has consistently month to month done very well. And so I'm open to suggestions. I've got a ton of projects, but I don't spend a lot of time filming these days because honestly, it's just repetitive work. Threading barrels, you can only see so many videos of me threading a barrel before it becomes mundane as it is for me to actually thread them. So was talking to a buddy of mine, a subscriber and an actual customer who lives local to me about building a forge the other day. I found a ceramics or a pottery kiln on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm in conversation with the owner trying to get that purchased. It's big enough to do some basic smelting and then some basic heat treating. It doesn't have a great temperature control on it and a timer, and so that may be a video, purchase the kiln and kind of do some upgrades to it to make it more user friendly for my purposes. But I need some cast iron feet for a milling machine. And rather than just ordering a hunk of cast iron from an online metal supplier, I thought it would be a cool project to cast to them. I have a bunch of brake drums laying around here that would be perfect for the project. But just looking at other options for the channel for rather than just, I know it's gunsmithing, but things that go along with it. So forging and casting and things of that nature. I got a big bag of copper over there, and I need to make some other copper hammers and a drift, that kind of deal. Yeah, that Pieta, the spring swap in them, I have a follow-up video that I have filmed a bunch of material for, but it's not very cohesive, and I don't really love it. I've edited it 2 or 3 times, and it's still just kind of blah. And so I haven't put it on the channel yet, but there's a lot of requests to do a trigger job on any of the Pieta guns or any of the Italian cowboy action guns, if you will, because a lot of them have a pretty crappy trigger or so-so trigger from the factory. A good friend of mine actually has one of his Pietas here with me. I did some work on it, and that's the gun that I'm going to ultimately do a trigger job and some modifications on. But like I said, the content is just kind of vanilla. But he has hinted at maybe wanting to do a giveaway, something in that variety. I don't necessarily know how to make that work with YouTube because of the content. But I am doing some work on that front. It just, like I said, it doesn't really speak to me. But I'm glad you got your spring swapped in there. It makes a big difference with those guns. There are a couple companies that sell a spring kit for them. I like Wolf, WOLFF. They have a pretty good spring kit that does kind of all the basic springs. And then you can go in and do some basic cleanup with a set of hones or hard Arkansas stones and make that trigger completely different. I need to run this week. I have a friend who owns a pawn shop here in town, and he's got a couple of projects he needs my help with. He bought some used firearms, and they need some repair work. And so I know there's a new Vaquero in there that needs some work, and so look for that video in the next couple of days. And then some other a little odd, piddly, rat-killing kind of stuff, but I'll get those from him, get the work done, and hopefully get some video content of the projects. What else? Any other questions? Anything that I'm forgetting? I feel like we've droned on. Half this video is about the subject matter and the other half is just me rambling. But if y'all don't have any further questions, I'm going to jump off of here. It's getting late enough in the day that I'm going to go ahead and start locking firearms up and doing some basic cleaning. So I wear Crocs to work most days. It's hot and humid here in Texas. And I was cutting a piece of plate the other day in the mill, and the plate had been cut with a torch on one side, so it was flame hardened. So I was using carbide tooling. Well, if you've carbide on mild steel that's flame hardened, it cuts these incredibly small. Let me show you. 1 second. I'm going to regret grabbing these, I can tell you already, but if you normal machine swarf, kind of springy looking, comes off in chips. When you cut with carbide tooling and it's something that's flame hardened, you get these tiny little razor blade looking needles. Let me put these down before I end up with them everywhere. And so I was wearing Crocs today in the shop, and shorts, by the way, and had to dig about 3 or 4 of those little tiny razor blade sharp needles out of the bottom of one of my Crocs because it was stabbing me in the foot. So I'm going to take some time and run the shop vac on all the machines, use the chip brush and get them all cleaned up. And then, like I said, lock some guns up. But I am ultimately going to make an action wrench. I've kind of talked myself into it since we've been here live streaming. And I think I am going to do a little video content on that, maybe a longer form video about the steps involved and ultimately how it works out. We'll see what I get a chance to film in the process. If you have a project, I say this all the time, and I get calls all the time. Not all of them turn to jobs, but if you have a gun project and you don't have someone local to you who can do it, or if you'd like to send it to me, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. The easiest way to reach me is on the website, huntsvilleguns.com. You can send me an email there. That contact button shoots me a direct email. Kind of give me an idea of what the project is and what you'd like done. And we'll see if I can't help you out. Had a conversation with a guy the other day from New York. Unfortunately, I can't do anything for him because of the project and the state he lives in. But I also regularly recommend, had a conversation with a lovely lady today about bluing of a firearm. And I have a company that I recommend to do my coatings. So I recommended her to them. I'd love to point you in the right direction, if nothing else. But I am going to jump off of here. If you're watching this after the live stream, here's your homework. Leave me a comment in the comment section about the shop-made tools that you have made and how useful they are, what you get the most use out of them versus when you buy a tool versus making one. But I'm going to jump off here. Thank you all for hanging out. Have a good one.